Good morning. It's so good to see all of you. Welcome to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation, the church that puts its faith in you. I'm Martha Sincula, your service leader. We're so glad that you're all here with us today, and I especially welcome those of you who might be with us for the first time, or maybe are back with us after not being here for a long time. I did talk to some people earlier that they haven't been here for at least, 3 years? Something like that, right. So welcome. Please stay for coffee and conversation so we can get to know you better, so we can all get to know each other better. Today we continue our live streaming to bring our service to the greater community. And we have to be seated by 10:30, and I'm so grateful to all of you who came in so promptly and sat down and didn't mingle around and I was the one that was late. So thank you, everybody. I want to thank our greeters, Al and Mary Herring, who've been on vacation, and it's good to see them again. And as you know, as a congregation, we are continuing to bring our beloved community together after being closed down for such a long time. And all the changes that are taking place here and out in the world, please continue to come from love and patience as we all adjust to the new. Every day there's something new to adjust to, isn't there? So please come from a place of love and understanding and acceptance. We thank everyone who are here again and those who aren't for keeping this very important space vital. I have some announcements. As you may recall, we had a yard sale last week. Nell reported the proceeds. Connie Erickson came up with a wonderful suggestion, and she started the yard sale fund, one check at a time. So here's my check, Connie. It's going to go in the collection today. We're trying to make our yard sale a little more profitable than it was. So one check at a time. Come in during the week, put treasure on your little card if you want to, or mail it in. We would really appreciate it. Thank you. The board, our new board, will be participating in email discussions this week, the next couple of weeks, to address ideas to share and the direction that we want to go. And the new board will convene our first meeting on the third Sunday of July 17th after service. Two more announcements. There's two wonderful things happening on July 10th, which is next week. John Slemmer, who's the son of our generous benefactor, Anna Slemmer. He'll be visiting us to view the very many improvements to our beautiful community here, that through her generous gifts that has been made possible, such as the front memory garden and outside grounds, the outside ramp that John worked so hard on, and our building interior improvements. So he will be here. He has to leave right after service because he has an appointment on the coast for his son. Also on July 10th at 1 o'clock, there will be a celebration of life for our former very active and beloved member, Larry Flanagan. It'll be held at River Forks Park, and Judy, his wife, has asked that we bring memories to share and a chair to sit in, just in case there's not enough placement for us. It's at 1 o'clock at River Forks Park. That's a lot to have on a Sunday, but we're hoping that many of you will be able to come to the memorial who knew Larry. He and Judy were very active here for many years, and he often did sermons. He was on the Sunday Services Committee. He was on many things, and he was, excuse me?
He's also a president.
He was a president. He was also very active in our community as a mental health professional. So given that, the next thing that we need to do, is there any other announcements from the floor that needs to happen? Given that, then we will start with our fish collection. And in our compassion for those in need in our congregation's service to the greater Roseburg community, we will now collect contributions. I will get baskets and Anand, and do I have another volunteer who might be energetic? Maybe Patty, since she's here for, oh, Patty, oh, no, John's gonna do it. He needs some exercise anyway. Thank you. Before we start our service, I want to make one correction to your order of service. There is a hymn replacement where it says in your hymn, I Believe by Elvis Presley, we're instead going to be singing We Would Be One from our gray hymnal, and that is 318. So just to be prepared when it's announced. Now is the time in our service. Oops, wait, I forgot. If you have one of these. I had signals from the peanut gallery out there telling me that we need to turn off our phones. So if you would kindly take a few minutes to put your phone on silent, please. There. Thank you, Joe. We start our service with lighting the chalice. Our words today are by Deborah Burrell, A Flame to Light Our Path. Fire consumes and casts the bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears for the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Our opening words, Phil will read.
Good morning. Good morning. Today I'm doing the second of a series of what I call historical sermons related to the history of our faith, its foundations in Christianity, and how it's diverged and gone its own way in the hundreds of years since then. You may be surprised to learn that we're a very old faith with our roots and foundations in the founding fathers, even in the Pilgrims of Massachusetts. So we're going to talk about those roots today. And here's my opening words. Robert Ingersoll was a friend of Walt Whitman and a fellow Civil War veteran. He was known as the Great Agnostic during the golden age of free thought in the 19th century. That was also known as the American Renaissance. He had this to say about our founding fathers. They knew that to put God in the Constitution was to put man out. They knew that the recognition of a deity would be seized upon by the fanatics and the zealots as a pretext for destroying the liberty of thought. They knew the terrible history of the church too well to place in her keeping or in the keeping of her God the sacred rights of man. They intended that all should have the right to worship or not to worship, and that our laws should make no distinction on account of creed. They intended to found and frame a government for man and for man alone. They wished to preserve the individuality of all to prevent the few from governing the many, and the many for persecuting and destroying the few. Alex de Tocqueville, a Frenchman who made a study of us out of curiosity in 1834 as he toured America, came to this conclusion. Our habits of heart hold us together with a healthy democracy required by that faith in each other. He saw us as a happy people, even though it was just the early times of our nation. However, now we seem to be slipping as the days pass. Almost everywhere and in everything, we have a harder and harder time imagining a choice that is not primarily fixed on proper or accepted thought. It is true of the political right and the political left, from gun policy to sexual politics. And the consequence is a greater polarization every day. We cannot even consider a common good anymore, an e pluribus unum. That is long gone. So we will celebrate today with family and friends our Independence Day, with a cookout in our yard and sparklers for the little ones, but with a longing for something more. Perhaps the questions are communal as well as individual, questions for all of us as they are questions for each of us. Who are we, and how are we going to live? Since Elvis has left the building, we will now sing hymn 381, We Would Be One.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice, strive to make us free.
If anything, Unitarians are known for their flexibility. We couldn't get the sound for Elvis to come up, so he has left the building. We are not going to be singing Children Downstairs. I don't see any. And there was an error in the order of service. The original service that I had gotten from Phil said we were going to have a story for all ages, and I put that in, but we weren't going to have a story for all ages. So welcome to what we're trying to put together, and we're trying to do our best. Thank you. Now's the time in our service when we remember our joys and concerns with silent or spoken candlelighting regarding significant milestones in our lives, including those at home to participate. I invite those who wish to light a candle, silent or spoken, to please form a line to my right over there. Please space yourself due to our still wanting to observe COVID policy. And when it's your turn, please give your name and be brief. And then use the big candle that's in the sandbox to light your candle, not the chalice. Thank you. Now's the time in our service where we take a collection. And it is our job and our blessing to collect money, to keep the lights on, to keep the gardens fresh, the water coming, to pay our employees, and to help support our church home. Please be generous as you can, and don't forget, eventually, if you can, give us a yard sale booster. Excuse me. For these gifts, may we be truly grateful and help keep our church home and do the work of the community.
Now's the time for a meditation to get us in touch with ourselves and re-anchor us in this chaotic world. So what I'd like you to do is, first of all, take in a deep breath, hold it for a second, and then blow it out. Imagine you're blowing away all the irritants, all the fly-like annoyances of the world, and then I'd like to take in another deep breath and just softly let it go. And then close your eyes and find a position that makes your body the most comfortable. Perhaps with your feet on the floor and some other way. As I say to you these words from a poem I wrote for this soul meditation, for Renaissance. The sparkling waters long had flowed down and down, towards and upon the weathered rock in ecstatic silence, seemingly impervious to their liquid and passionate pleadings, light and dark in cascading collision. No emergence here, or emergence either, only a settling down and down into the earth around. Waters becoming muddied, stone indistinguishable. Yet, here on the underside now, and settled by the flow, the limestone surfaces are revealed. Fossilized remnants of many creatures, once wetly unique in their separate lives, now so dryly bound and perpetual anonymity. The trickle at last finds purchase, a hold shyly taken on the rock, then slipping away, then once again, until passage is gained to the labyrinth chambers, Nautilus revealed, tickling the rock awake from its decaying slumber. The two, water and stone, join in rapturous harmony, intermingled, inseparable one. Water purifying itself clear in the stone's absorptive power. Stone opening, unclenched and unclutched, compliant with the irresistible beckoning forth. Close met with grass moss, glistening as it gathers in these pourings pontifical, God's rainbow promise reveals itself in the certitude of beginnings without endings. Life's transformations made manifest in the reopened cacophony of spring, now flowing forth as many such others in the jubilation as the river of life renews. And now, take another deep breath in, let it go, and come back to this room fully alert and at peace all around you.
Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife. Who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, make God thy gold refined, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. And you know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. But now wait a minute, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good. Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this. America, I love you, America. You see, my God, he done shed his grace on thee. And you ought to love him for it, 'cause he cried.
it fits the day well for what the day should be. Maybe not what it is, but what it can be, what it has been, and maybe what it will be again someday. We had a minister, her name was Annie, and I'll never forget she told me that if you want to make sure that you have people's attention, you better start every sermon with a joke. So here goes. Jesus took his disciples up to the mountain and gathered around them, and he taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for blessed are that mourn. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are those who thirst for peace. Blessed are all concerned. Blessed are you when persecuted. Blessed are you when you suffer. Be glad and rejoice, your reward is great in heaven." Try to remember what I'm telling you. Then Simon Peter said, "Will this count?" And Andrew said, "Will we have a test on it?" And James said, "When do we have to know it for?" And Philip said, how many words? And Bartholomew said, "Will I have to stand up in front of the others?" And John said, "The other disciples didn't have to learn this. Do I have to read it?" And Matthew said, "How much money do we get for it?" And Judas said, "What's it worth?" And the other disciples likewise tried to pass the buck. Then one of the Pharisees who was present asked to see Jesus' lesson plan. And he inquired of Jesus his terminal objectives in the cognitive domain. And Jesus wept. I think Jesus would weep if he witnessed the evil and selfish acts committed by people over the ages in his name. I believe that our church represents a departure from such evils and a return to his gospels as he originally intended them to be, in the truest sense of the word gospel, that is, good news. So that's my funny for today. Now, why the title Plymouth Rocks? Well, some people think our faith tradition is something new and radical, but the Unitarian Universalist Spirit of Fellowship is as old as America itself and as broad at its base as all religions. Modern-day Christian evangelicals assert that the United States was founded as a Christian nation, and that out-of-control secularists, us, have broken faith with that tradition. This rigidity of belief is a natural precursor for American exceptionalism. And you know what that is? It's kind of like manifest destiny. You know, if we see it as ours, we'll take it because we're special, you know. And of course, the native peoples really suffered from that. Did you know there were 50 million Native Americans when Columbus first got here? And by 1900, they were down to less than 1 million? Yeah. Fortunately, they're on their way back now. Modern evangelicals either have failed to study early American history or deny it. For instance, in 1630, the year after the few surviving first pilgrims, all 46 of them, Nell and I are related to 24 of them, and we found out we're 10th cousins. They made it through their first winter. And then a large fleet of ships under Lord Winthrop left England for the New World. Like the original pilgrims, this fleet largely derived from a separatist congregation called the Leighton Congregation, which had originally departed to England for the Netherlands several years earlier. Why? Because they were being persecuted for their beliefs. These separatists had criticized the English church because its beliefs and rituals were too much like the Roman Catholic Church. And that was bad enough. So they also objected to the ideas of fate and predestination espoused by the Anglican Presbyterians. I was a Presbyterian growing up, and I was always told that whatever happens, that's just the way it's going to be. And I said, wait a minute, don't I get a choice? And essentially, they wished to establish localized authority for their congregations with a simplification of moral principles and an emphasis on personal conduct rather than confession and redemption. And they became known as the Puritans. But on the arrival of Winthrop's fleet, he soon established the first Congregationalist church in Boston in 1630. And we were blessed with a visit of some Congregationalists from New England just last week, weren't we? And they did a lot of service to our church. The number of colonists by then had expanded from 46 to several hundred. Soon, however, many of these latter Puritans were frustrated in the limited evidence of changes in the Boston church, which to this day is still rather conservative, to the extent that they forced out and formed even more independent churches. The leader of the new separatist movement, I'm proud to say, was a woman named Annie Hutchinson. She gathered the women of the church together for their own meetings. They declared that the ministers of the Boston church were unsanctified and consequently unsafe as spiritual guides. The response of her male opposition declared her doctrines as favoring immortality and laxity. Besides, she was only a woman, and everyone knew that she only had the rights afforded by her male relatives, since there's nothing in the Constitution about women. A heresy investigation was actually launched. They were thinking about calling her a witch, and you know what happened to witches back then. This led to her banishment to Rhode Island, which at that point was a swamp, while the one minister, Reverend Wheelwright, who agreed with her, was also banished, but to New Hampshire, so there'd be no hanky-panky. Her remaining male followers were forced to surrender their firearms, which, no Second Amendment back then, which was a lot more dangerous in those times than it would be today, because you really needed a gun back then. Eventually, these men departed with their families and joined Reverend Wheelwright in Exeter, New Hampshire in April 1638, where they established what eventually was to become the oldest continuing Unitarian church in America. To this day, it still has services. Therefore, we can say with confidence that the majority of our earliest forefathers were more Unitarian than Christian, sharply differing from English churches in their emphasis on individual thought and self-direction. Evangelicals also ignore one more important fact. The Puritans did not found America, nor did they found the nation of the United States. They only formed colonies, which preceded the Congress in 1774, the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and the Constitution in 1787 by more than 100 years. The Pledge of Allegiance was not written until 1892, and therefore is not a founding document at all. Moreover, it did not contain the words "under God" until 1954. "In God We Trust" was not established as the national motto nor printed on currency until 1956, a reaction of the McCarthy witch trial era to the notion that there was a communist under every Bush. In addition, most of the colonial population of their time were totally unchurched until 1790, according to historian Richard Hofstadter. Perhaps as many as 90% of the colonists never went to church at all. They lived too far out. They're too rural. They couldn't get to them if there even were any. Mid-century America had a smaller population of church members than any other nation in Christendom, certainly in Europe. Even by 1800, only 1 out of every 15 Americans was a church member. Can you imagine? By the way, majority of Americans, for the first time, are not members of churches now. For American evangelism, the Christian nation myth is an excuse for the alt-right to take America back for God in order to forward their political agendas. If they could prove that the U.S. was founded on Christian principles, it provides them with a foothold to achieve their goals, including the reinstitution of official discrimination against anybody not like them. However, if the founders of the United States of America intended to establish Christianity as the country's official religion, they did a terrible job of it. The founding fathers deliberately kept religion from entering the documents that established the government. Accordingly, we will briefly examine the religious views of the 8 recognized founding fathers. to see if the idea of a Christian is consistent with their view of the role of government when they established it. We'll also examine the documents themselves which created the nation to see what references to religion may occur. First of all, Thomas Paine, an early radical, hung for his beliefs, not really a founding father, but his book Common Sense was the all-time best-selling book that advocated American political and social independence. Unfortunately for the Christian nation advocates, Paine was an atheist. He stated of all the tyrannies that affect mankind, tyranny in religion is the worst. No wonder they hung him. Benjamin Franklin. Franklin earned the title of the first American, mostly because he's older than most of the other founders and probably smarter, for his early and indefatigable campaigning for colonial unity as an author and spokesman in London for several colonies. Then as the first United States ambassador to France, he exemplified the emerging American nation. Franklin said lighthouses are more useful than churches in showing us the way to salvation. He said that in the affairs of the world, men are saved not by faith, but by the lack of it. In other words, hope. Now we have Alexander Hamilton, subject of a popular play. Most of us couldn't even remember him until that play came out. He never talked about Christ, and he took refuge in vague references to providence or heaven. He did not belong formally to any denomination. Hamilton used religion more as a political tool than anything else. That sounds familiar. In this way, Hamilton can be likened to politicians of today who also use religion as a political tool. John Jay, may not remember him, but he was a popular guy among the founders. He was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Indeed, he was an Episcopal Christian. He was the most conservative and religious of the founding fathers. However, even his view of Christianity was one of tolerance. He said that real Christians will abstain from violating the rights of others. And this is the conservative of the bunch. Real Christians will abstain from violating the rights of others. Now, Thomas Jefferson, my favorite. I don't know if you realized it, but he revised the New Testament, and he took out what he considered all the myths and possibly false stories and miracles. And his book was so successful that until 1948, every new member of the United States Congress was given a copy of it. Think about that, the Jeffersonian Bible. He was the third president. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. He stated that Christianity is the most perverted system ever shown on man. There is not one redeeming feature in our superstition of Christianity. It has made one half of the world fools and the other half hypocrites. This guy didn't spare any words, In his early quest for the historical Jesus, Jefferson did complete his own version of the Gospels, deleting all the miracles, and only kept Jesus' moral teachings, which to this day I believe in very strongly. I consider myself a liberal Christian with a small c, basically. Like Unitarians, he believed that proper religion is a uniquely private, individual matter, and cautioned his fellow Americans against adopting any formal set of broadly accepted religious dogma. If he was around today, he'd come out with both dueling pistols, I'm sure. John Adams, if you ever saw the movie about him, that was quite good. He was a very irascible guy, but he was a founding father and he was second president. Historians regard him as the most intelligent of all presidents to date. He assisted Jefferson in drafting the Declaration of Independence. He nominated George Washington to be commander-in-chief of the armies. He was father of John Quincy Adams, the 6th president. He stated, "This would be the best of all possible worlds if there was no religion in it." Sound like John Lennon. He was widely regarded as a Unitarian Christian influenced by deism. He was the first Unitarian president. He rejected the deity of Jesus, and he believed in a strictly personal God. In other words, figure it out for yourself, which is not easy to do, as we all know. James Madison is hailed as the father of the Constitution. He drafted the Constitution and was also the author of the Bill of Rights. Also the 4th president. He's noted for drafting the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, although he must have been awfully tired when he wrote the Second Amendment. He stated that the line of separation between the rights of religion and the civil authority will best be guarded by an entire abstinence of the government from interference in any way whatsoever, and protecting each sect against trespasses on its legal rights by others. Religious bondage shackles and debilitates the mind and unfits it for every noble enterprise. Very wordy guy. But you get the gist. James Monroe. Not much to say about him, except he did get us the Louisiana Purchase. He was the 5th president and the last one who was a founding father. He was a nominal Episcopalian all his life, but seems to have had little interest in religion. His public writings made a few mentions of a guiding providence, but said nothing explicitly Christian. Now, of other notables, we'll go to George Washington. We all know about him. First commander-in-chief, later first president. They tried to make him king. Did you know that? And he said, "No, that's why we just had a war. We don't need no more kings. Done with that." He stated, "Of all the animosities which have existed among mankind, those are which caused by the difference of sentiments in religion appear to be the most distressing and ought to be depreciated." Throughout his life, he attended the Anglican, later Episcopal, no wonder they got so much money, church fairly regularly. He valued the role of religion in promoting morality and order, and he did believe in a divine providence. However, he never took communion, and he declined becoming a bishop. And when chided by a minister for leaving church before communion, which he did every Sunday, he never again attended church. We now see him as a deist, not a Christian, and very much like Adams. Probably would be sitting here amongst us if he's alive today. Finally, a quick quote from a great president of a later time, Abraham Lincoln. "The Bible is not my book, nor Christianity my profession." Very simply stated. And lest we forget, President Obama's grandparents, who were his role models in growing up, took him to Unitarian churches all the time while he grew up, and they're still solid Unitarians, aren't they? Clearly, the founders of our nation intended government to maintain a neutral position in matters of religion. The text of the Declaration of Independence contains just 4 theological references: nature's God, creator, supreme judge of the world, and divine providence. These are all deistic forms. They are not a single specific mention in any of the founding documents of Jesus or Christianity. Just some deist words. The Declaration, reflecting the signatories' collected thinking, was carefully written and edited several times, and those words were not included, not by oversight, but deliberately. The Constitution and the amendments only mention religion 3 times, and only as prohibitions against government doing something religious. It is remarkable that so many of our citizens have lost or never knew our history in terms of our constitutional rights. People go around claiming their constitutional rights and haven't even read the darn thing. 1/3 of our citizens believe that the First Amendment did not establish a clear separation of church and state, even though it did. And more than 1/2 still believe that the U.S. was established as a Christian nation, which it clearly was not. The current politicized Supreme Court appears to be moving toward erosion of the constitutional barrier between church and state. And through recent decisions of the court, I think we're in for rough times. We need to seriously consider whether our nation or the world can any longer afford the kind of patriotism that is narrowly nationalist or affiliated exclusively with any religion. How does exceptionalism serve us by insisting that we must have the best weapons and be the policemen of the world? They display the independence of the Puritans, but without their sense of social responsibility and individual accountability. They really like to focus on them for crime and punishment, don't they? America is a great nation, but its greatness is not based upon its being religious. What has made our nation great is law. Unlike any other nation on earth has ever had, except maybe the Hammurabi laws 2,000 years ago. We have a constitution that applies equally to all citizens, even though women and blacks are not specifically mentioned. Certainly the inference is there. And if they were alive today, they would have written those things in. President Woodrow Wilson signed an executive order in 1916 designating the Star-Spangled Banner as the anthem of the United States for all military ceremonies. On March 3rd, 1931, after 40 previous attempts failed, a measure passed Congress and was signed into law that formally designated the Star-Spangled Banner as the national anthem of the United States, although it did not become standard as sporting events until after World War II among the veterans. Does anybody know the song that was second in the running? America the Beautiful. Yeah, too bad. And who wrote that? Well, President Wilson was the one behind the effort, and it was the Congress that did it.
No, but factually based.
Factually based, I don't have my specific reference here, but you can sure look it up and you'll find it in several places.
Who wrote that America the Beautiful?
Oh, a woman?
Yeah?
She's in our songbook, and I can't tell you right now because I don't remember, but she's there, and we appreciate that song, don't we? So, when holidays come and patriotism fills the air, it is appropriate for Americans to salute their flag. Certainly, as a retired military member, I will always salute the flag. I think that taking a knee is wrong at any event where the flag is shown. I think it's just another way to confuse morality with politics. So you won't find me on my knees with the flag. In the words of Jesus, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So the flag to me is Caesar's, no? It is our duty as American citizens to pledge our allegiance to the flag and to the nation for which it stands. However, the government cannot compel me to swear anything about deity, even though the religious zealots of the 1950s decided to be so when they added under God to the Pledge of Allegiance, in opposition to our congressional rights, our constitutional rights. Therefore, when it comes time to recite the pledge, I do so proudly. But I substitute one secular word in place of the one religious word in the pledge. And so when I say it, it goes like this. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under law, because that is our uniqueness, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. This is what the pledge should say if truly represented all Americans. So have faith in our forefathers and the instruments of governing that they wrote. In other words, if we fully appreciate and understand what they gave us, then Plymouth still rocks. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I can take questions, comments, whatever. Nobody walked out, that's a good sign.
Constitutional right as a congregation to ask questions. So is there anyone that would like to make a comment or a question? I knew Ms. Pratt.
Now remember, I know my history.
My comment is about the Pledge of Allegiance. And when they changed it, I can still feel the feeling in my heart that say, wait a minute, that's not right.
That's right.
And so I just left the whole thing out.
That's
I
the
just
other
take
way
a
to do
deep
it.
breath. But I like under law. I could have thought of that.
Yeah. And nobody will know you said it.
Phil, my question to you is the same as always. Would you please do a discussion group for our congregants on the content of these sermons? There are so many people who really want to talk about it, and I can't think of a more perfect person and
If
a
there
more
really are.
educated and skilled person to do it.
Okay, we'll figure that out, yeah.
I heard him say that.
Wow, years, thank you.
I want to do, there's a third one I want to do that will kind of tie it all together, so.
We have Senor Phil coming in September.
To number 3, yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Connie?
Thank you so much, Phil.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, that was perfect. I'm going to go home and send a note to all my friends to go on YouTube and listen to your talk.
Oh, good.
I am. It was great. Thank you.
That's right, it's on there, isn't it? Be there long after I'm gone, I bet. Anybody else?
Are we okay?
We're going to do our last song.
Wait, hold
Oh.
on. We have another
No
person in the
comment?
audience. And we have Jake to thank for thinking on his feet today,
Yes.
getting a hymn replaced. Let's give a hand up for Jake.
Hey, Jake. Anybody else before we talk about
Yeah,
the last hymn?
John has a question. or
Yeah,
a
John.
statement.
Yeah, just wanted to say, Phil, that was excellent. That was wonderful. In college, I did a real extensive thing on Ben Franklin, but what you did with all the other presidents, it's making me just want to go home and really delve into all of them.
Do it,
And
do
it
it.
was absolutely powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then we can sign you up for a sermon sometime.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
We're going to do a song in a minute that's a delight to me, and part of it's going to be sing-along for us of our most popular hymn, which happens to be Let This Little Light Shine. Remember that one? Yeah. It's going to be in the last half of this hymn, and you'll know when to kick in. This hymn is done by a young lady who, when she was 21, after having worked on the streets of Chicago for 4 years as a bursar, you know what those are? She would stand in front of subway openings and play her guitar and sing for collections, contribution. Her mother's whereabouts was unknown. Her father was taking care of his business, so she was really on her own. But she was discovered, and she applied to American Idol. And that year came in second. She should have won, but she was a woman. Teenage girls were flooding the airways with votes. And the young man that won, you've probably never heard of then or since, because she's had a lot more hits than he's had. But anyway, her name was Crystal Bowersox. Funny name. Nell and I had the privilege to meet her one day when we were flying back to Oregon from seeing our son, and she was sitting quietly in the lobby with us. I said, "You look very familiar. Are you Crystal?" And she said, "Yes." And okay, I thought nothing more of it. But when we got on the plane, Nell and I were not seated together. And that was okay. But Crystal came up and said, "Would you like to sit with your wife?" And she gave up a perfectly awful seat that nevertheless gave us a chance to sit together, and she sat somewhere else. And I thought, how selfless and how thoughtful this young woman is. And I've written her a few times on her Facebook to remind her of that moment, and she still remembers it. And she's been through a lot of ups and downs since then. She's had a divorce, she's had 2 babies, but she still travels the country, mostly doing small clubs, singing, and she's had a couple moderate hits. This one, however, I think should go in our hymnal. So let's go ahead and start it.
There's a synagogue in Texas, and that building sits right next to another place of prayer beneath the crescent moon and star. Some coward burned the whole place down. Don't you know that synagogue reached out? They said, "You're welcome here, come and worship as you are." It don't matter if there's 5 or 6 points on your star. It takes courage to be kind, be brave enough to walk your love across a party line. This little light of yours and mine, it's time to let it shine. Time to find the courage to be kind. Some guy walked into a Charleston church, took out 9 people without a word. He was taught to hate them for the color of their skin. Next morning I was watching TV, and to this day I still can't believe the families forgave him for his sins. They said no matter what, love must always win. It takes courage to be kind, to be brave enough to walk your love across a party line. This little light of yours and mine, it's time to let it shine. Find the courage to be kinder than we've ever been. Let's find a way to love again. Kinder than we've ever been. Let's find a way to love again. Love again. Let's love again. When your tie is red and my shirt is blue, you don't care for me, I don't care for you. But if we dig a little deeper, we will find. Ooh, we all wanna feel safe, all wanna be loved. We've all got dreams we're dreaming of. We're taught to fear, but we don't know. Why can't we let it go? Oh, why can't we let it go? Lord, I wanna let it go. Wanna let it go. I wanna find the courage to be kind. I wanna be brave enough to walk my love across these party lines. With this little light of yours and mine, it's time to let it shine. Time to find the courage to be kind. I'm gonna let it shine. Gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it find the courage to be kind.
Facebook, Courage to Be Kind, Crystal Battle Socks. They'll come right up. All right. Closing words. Keep this short because we are running a little late. On this holiday weekend, we remember those who are no longer present with us here, but who remain forever present in our hearts and who live on in our memories. We embrace those whose sorrow is unmeasurable. We have no cure for sorrow, only the comforting love of those who are closest to us. We honor those in uniform who continue courageously to run towards danger on our behalf. May we be worthy of their courage and sacrifice. And we ask our civic leaders to always guide us in ways that promote peace over war, tolerance over intolerance, reason over blind passion, and love over hate. May all here find blessings in their lives, hope in their days, and comfort in their nights. Let us go now in peace as the candle is extinguished. Amen.
Join us in singing our closing song, Go Lift It Up. Go now in peace. Join us for coffee and tea.